Hello, hi. So I'm back for VEDA Day 14, and I want to talk about what's going on right now with the pandemic, but from a different perspective than I've seen a lot of people talk about. I won't say that it's not happening at all, but I haven't seen as much of it. I saw a Twitter thread where someone was talking about how people who have either chronic conditions or just who have chronic conditions or illnesses that they've had for a long period of time and had to deal with the medical establishment on a more consistent ongoing basis than kind of most regularly healthy people who just go in for like checkups once a year or so, tend to be a bit more sensitive and more diligent about doing what it takes to not catch COVID than maybe people who, the people who you see that are the most vocal about it not being real and everyone's overreacting are people who often have much more casual relationship with the medical establishment. So they may only go once a year for checkups. In some instances, they may go every other year, depending on who they are and kind of whose medical advice they follow, because they've changed the rules where you only, like, at one point women were recommended and expected to get a pap smear and a pelvic exam every year. They've now changed that to, I think, every 2 years or every 3 years. I don't remember, and the reason why I don't remember is because I still go every year because I have endometriosis and fibroids and I've had cysts, so I don't have time to be playing around with going every other year and stuff going haywire, and then I end up getting sick and all jacked up because I didn't go every year. So I go every year still, but I think it's either every 2 years or every 3 years. It's much more spaced out, but nonetheless, people who tend to have kind of a more casual relationship with the medical establishment are sometimes the ones who can be a little bit more, I feel fine, everything's fine. If I get it, I'll just get over it and it'll be fine. Those of us who have had ongoing relationships with the medical establishment have a different, can I won't say will, but can have a different point of view, which for me, reading that in a Twitter thread, it was kind of broken down even further. It gave me a really nice aha, because I have been very anxious about COVID. I've been really anxious and kind of afraid and really just like wanting to be diligent about it because I don't want to catch it. And yes, I don't want to catch it because everything I've read about the symptoms sounds like trash. So I definitely don't want that. I don't want to be sick. It's not the move. I don't want to. So I'm going to do everything in my power, everything that I possibly can to try to not catch it. But an extra layer on that for me so there's two things that kind of adds to my anxiety about it, because I don't normally have anxiety. And this is kind of a newer feeling for me. And it's just like, what is this? I'm very hyper aware, and it's like, oh, this is a type of anxiety around this particular thing, which is completely natural. And there's a lot of people that I'm sure that are experiencing anxiety around just the world and what's happening, because everything feels aggressively aggressive. But with that, I saw that Twitter thread that kind of gave me an aha, and so and I want to just kind of talk about the reasons why I am really anxious and kind of concerned about catching COVID. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because I realized that there could be other people who might feel the same way, but can't articulate it because they just know, like, this is an incurable illness, disease, infection that can kill some people, can make other people deathly ill, but they survive. Some people, it's just like they catch, they don't have to go to the hospital. I'll say that, so because it's not mild by any means, but they don't have to go to the hospital. They can kind of treat it like a cold or a flu, really like a bad flu. And then some people who have no symptoms at all. And so the gamut is so broad. Why is it that you might feel a little bit anxious? And so this is why I feel anxious, and maybe this can give you an aha moment or some language that you hadn't considered, or maybe to help you maybe feel a little bit better. Or sometimes it's just helpful to hear it in words and be able to put it into words yourself, to have language for it. So two reasons why I am super anxious about COVID and really don't want to catch it. Aside from the obvious, it's a condition that can kill you, but also just catching it is trash. Like the symptoms are it's very miserable, and who wants to be miserable on purpose? I digress, but who wants to be miserable on purpose? I'm not going to go into that and the people who say it's fake. But two reasons. One, I have had I've had bad experiences with the medical establishment, with doctors who are supposed to be there to treat me and improve my health, who have either made me sick because they did not do their due diligence as medical professionals. And that by that I mean asking questions, kind of learning, taking the time to learn about me as a person, so that I can be treated effectively. One example is I went to a doctor that deals with a gastroenterologist. I went to a gastroenterologist and was like, I'm having these issues with my stomach, whatever. And she prescribed me a probiotic. I was like, you need to take a probiotic. I was like, cool, that makes sense. I had taken them before. Unfortunately, though, the probiotic that she gave me has lactobacillus in it, which is in a dairy-ish. It's like lact, so it's kind of dairy related, and that stuff made me so sick, like sick as a dog. And initially, I had no idea why I was so sick, but I have a dairy allergy. I cannot eat or drink or consume dairy. It's to the point for me where I can't even eat food that there's a milk derivative called casein or casein, I don't know how to pronounce it, that's in a lot of vegan foods. I can't eat that. Like, I have to read everything before I eat it when I'm at the store, because it'll make me sick. I'm very sensitive to dairy. I don't know if it's a full intolerance or if it's just a sensitivity. Whatever it is, it makes me sick. So she prescribed me medicine that was supposed to help me that made me sick. Now, I just had to come to this conclusion on my own, because when I reached out to the office, they weren't helpful. And I was like, I don't feel well, I'm getting sick. They weren't helpful. So that was a negative experience with the medical establishment. I've had doctors talk down to me, talk to me like I'm stupid, like I don't know my body and I don't know what I'm talking about when I'm asking for care, advocating for myself. I have had a doctor tell me that the way to cure endometriosis was to go out and get pregnant with a straight face, wrote on a prescription with a smiley face. So I have had negative experience with the medical staff. One story. So I've had to have a piece of my belly button cut off. So I've always been an outie. My belly button has always been an outie, but now it's an innie, and it's really just it's been cut off. And that's because endometriosis I've talked more about it, but just a quick description. Endometriosis is when there are cells that are like the ones that are inside of your endometrium, that are the ones that kind of plump up when you are pregnant, but they're also the ones that you shed once a month. Those cells like those get outside of your endometrium and your uterus. For some reason, they get outside and they float around your body. Now, the reason why that's bad, because you have foreign bodies that don't belong outside of your uterus, outside floating around, but also they shed once a month, because your endometrium sheds once a month, which means now you have these foreign bodies floating around in your body, bleeding once a month. That's problematic. Also, though, they can attach to different parts of your organs and cause issues. My cells had managed to grow, make it to my belly button and attach to my belly button. So my belly button started bleeding once a month. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I went to multiple doctors and felt like a lab rat. They were poking at me like, oh, that's cool. They were treating me like like I was a specimen that they were studying, not a human. It was terrible. It was demoralizing. I've had bad experiences. Because of that, I know if I were to have COVID, I would be really afraid to go to the hospital, because there is no treatment. Also, medical racism is a thing, and they treat Black women, even if you're advocating for yourself, they don't give us the same quality of care just as a medical establishment. Now, I might luck up. I live in Atlanta. It's it is a Black city. I might luck up and get a doctor who does not do that, but I might not. And I don't know what would happen. I don't know if they would leave me if I didn't feel well. I don't know if they would take it seriously. When I don't feel well, I tend to go inward. So I'm not super emotive and expressive when I don't feel well. I'm just kind of powering through it so that I can get better. So they might take that as, oh, she's not really as sick as she should be, so we're just gonna send her home. Like, I just don't trust it. And so therefore that makes me anxious. Another reason is 3 years ago, I got pneumonia. It was a mild case of pneumonia. And by mild, it was just like, I didn't have to like go on oxygen. I didn't have to stay in the hospital at all. I was able to go home and take care of it. But as a result of having pneumonia, they prescribed me antibiotics because it's an infection, which when you get COVID, they might prescribe you antibiotics to try to get rid of the infection. Those antibiotics messed me up. They made me so sick. They caused me to have a flare. So I am dealing with pneumonia. I feel like crap. I'm coughing, fever going in and out. It was a lot. It was bad. On top of that, now I have super duper killer aggressive cramps. And like the kind of cramps where your leg hurts and your back hurts and your pelvis hurts at the same time. I was sleeping on my heating pad on high. I had heating pad burns on my stomach because I needed relief from the cramps so that I could try to rest to get over the pneumonia. It was terrible. It was so bad that I stopped taking antibiotics and was like, I'm just gonna have to power through this because this is really, really making me sick. And I had no support. I went to the minor emergency room, which, they treat you right then and there. And then once they send you out in the world, you're out in the world. What was I going to do? They were going to tell me to keep taking antibiotics because you're supposed to finish them. But I was in so much pain. So between that experience that I have to draw from and just my experiences with the medical establishment, that makes me super anxious about COVID because I don't know that I would get the quality of care that I should. I'm also, on Affordable Care Act, so my insurance is not quite as jazzy as other people's insurance. So what I can possibly get and maybe even afford versus what someone else might get can afford might vary also. And so you just have all of those nuanced things that makes it even more of a daunting situation because, some people get sick and they can have the quality of care that they need. Other people, you get sick, you don't get the quality of care that you need. And based on my experiences, I wouldn't expect to. And I would be afraid that whatever they would give me, they would ignore what I say about this might cause me to get sick, tell me that it won't. I'm not sure that it won't. So now I have to deal with, potentially having COVID, but then also having a super terrible, awful flare, which is bad. And so as someone who is in like partial flare right now, I don't want this worse. And I think that is something to consider if trying to understand, yes, being anxious just about it in general because it is this unknown pathogen that there is no cure, there is no real treatment, and there is no vaccine for, so no way to protect yourself from getting it. That's already fear enough. Knowing that you might be treated poorly if you do have it and you might not get the medical care that you should based on a pre-existing condition makes it worse. And so that's really just my thoughts and story. Maybe it helps someone, maybe it'll kind of give you another perspective to think about it for yourself, but also maybe for a loved one or a friend. So if you're thinking everyone's overreacting, you have to think about it from other perspectives outside of your own. And so I'm just giving you another perspective. So that's my VEDA day 14. Thank you for tuning in, and I will be back tomorrow. So I look forward to the next time that we can talk again.